Hey, it is your buddy, Peace and Harmony with you here today. Much love going out to all the beautiful, empowered harmonizers. We are zooming in and focusing in a little bit more in depth on the narcissistic relationship trait and dynamic of scapegoating. A previous viewer had sort of asked a question about scapegoating and black sheep. And I think it's important for people who have experienced a relationship with a narcissist, with a malignant narcissist, or with a psychopath, someone, a narcissist who has a pathological sense of self importance and really a lack of empathy, combined oftentimes with a lot of sort of grandiosity, just sort of manipulative and controlling behaviors, the entitlement, really that causes them to just sort of conceal and, deceive people, that is very damaging and harming to others. So it doesn't really hurt them. It's others who end up, it's on their ticket, on their watch. And so when we really talk about, a narcissist relationship trait of scapegoating, it's really important that you understand very much about the dynamics, what that looks like, what it means, and also the fact that, how you are then carrying a lot of their really a lot of their unworked through feelings, emotions, and that they have kept bottled up. Oftentimes, and they're very rigid. They're not comfortable talking about this. They're not comfortable being out in the open. They're not okay with being on the same page with you. They're not in the groove. They're not in the zone with other people when the relationship gets to this level. They, begin to then feel a need to scapegoat onto others. So once it's kind of like a trigger for them, meaning if a situation comes up, a crisis comes up, a relationship comes up, they're needing to be parents, they're needing to be spouses, they're needing to be siblings. Maybe the relationship dynamic is employer, a man, whoever it is. A lot of people will encounter this scapegoating in the workplace as well. We lost the job because you didn't do this. You failed here. Scapegoating, even though, all their other worksheets weren't figured out, all of a sudden it's your problem, and you're carrying the whole truckload of all, the whole mess and all the guilt, and it's all your fault. So that's really scapegoating also takes place there, where basically people don't want to admit guilt for their fault. They're not comfortable being vulnerable and saying, I made a mistake, I was wrong, I was overzealous, I was too harsh, I was, I was mean, that was inconsiderate of me, I should have known better. You're not going to hear that heart-centered sort of speech coming from them. It's not, oftentimes it's not going to be there. It's not going to be real, even though it's maybe the one relationship you thought was supposed to be real or going to be real. You're not going to have that same heart-to-heart relationship, with, that feeling rather. If there is this lack of empathy, you're going to feel that there's some distance or coldness, or sort of the other person is sort of shut out from you. They're just not emotionally available. It's just you can feel it in their demeanor. But scapegoating is when somebody wants to rid a lot of their insecurities, a lot of their own sort of things that they are not comfortable with about themselves. They want to displace it onto another. They want to get rid of it, but place it onto another as a receptacle for sort of purifying them, and sort of, having them as a way to discharge a lot of their negative emotions onto. You've heard people say, I feel like I'm absorbing everybody's negative energy. It can be, and oftentimes they can have a negative energy, though, that lurks below the surface, which is the subconscious, which oftentimes, psychologists have studied and relationship people have studied. And it's knowing a little bit about the flow of these dynamics and how to identify it, and then how to manage and control it, and seeing the dynamics and the causes has created this feeling for you. And oftentimes people want to change it because it's painful or uncomfortable or limiting for them. And it's preventing them to, feel like they're really living their life, or they're not really sort of going where they want to be going in life. They're just not on track. And so, but the scapegoating is important to understand that it's really when sort of people sort of put their sins onto another and sort of just allow them to deal with it, and just sort of, walk away from them, with their sins. And so it's like, you've done this and this to me, and now you want me to walk away, and just without due process, without talking, without hearing my side, without even hearing me or seeing me at all. You're just sort of feeling like a sacrifice, and so oftentimes people do feel that they have sacrificed a lot for this person. And and so, but every relationship is going to have some sacrifices, but not to the point where you feel so empty and so depleted and so in the valley, in those, down and out moments, unhappy. That means you have to change. You have to get going onto, it's time to get going. You gotta, if you're unhappy, you gotta start doing what makes you happy, going where makes you happy, and knowing what are the steps that you need to take to get there. Starting with step 1 to 3 and 5, and knowing what 2 and 4 is, so you can go to 6 and then 10 and then 20 and then 1,000. So you have to be able to, keep those steps going and back yourself up. But if you have been in a relationship with a narcissist and you've been scapegoated a lot, where you've been sort of laden with a lot of these heavy emotions, that weren't a good fit for you. They were too dank, too serious, too controlling, too, some people say evil, too admonishing, too rebuking, too harsh, it was, didn't allow you to shine. All those things, you must realize then that it has a real profound effect. And so you have to sort of catch it where it is and get things sort of smoothed out, sort of comb through it energetically, honestly, energetically, because if you then want to move forward and get it going, you have to then be able to experience really the opposite of that, which is self-trust and faith. Have some faith, live by a faith, like they say, you got to have faith, so you're then living by faith. It doesn't have to be joy, jumping, high rises in a single bound. I mean, you can just be, feeling, you've got faith, and that is enough. And to have the faith, what do they say? The faith the size of a mustard seed, so you have to restore that and then remember that emotional state, and to be able to call that forth really deliberately, and realize that when you're feeling down and out, or like the black sheep, or, the scapegoating has gotten to be too much, you need to say, been there, done that, got the t-shirt, here's the rest, take it, take it all. Give the t-shirt, here's a quarter, call somebody who cares. And, it's just basically saying, I'm not going to take that mud anymore. I'm not going to take this treatment. You hit a rock bottom. You also, develop a boundary, and you develop a standard, which means after that, I have to learn how to say no and enforce it, and show that I'm like a frontline man, that I'm strong and assertive. I might not be perfect, but I'm going to get there. And to realize that every day in every way, you're going to start to get better, So having the goal in mind is half of the battle. I mean, that's a lot of the battle, is even having the goal and knowing what it is and having it in mind, so you have a vision of it and then know it, and that so you can then move towards it and then execute it and do it and be it. But if you've been scapegoated a lot, and you haven't, oftentimes, a lot of people have not had the experience of operating in a state of trust, of self-trust. They've always felt shame. They've always felt, someone else, they've always felt that there's going to be something catastrophic happening. That they have to keep, again, plates going in the air for somebody else all the time where they don't even matter. They've felt shut out, not listened to. And feeling that unrepresented, or oftentimes even people feel invisible. I mean, they just literally feel that they don't even know them. And then it becomes difficult because then how can you get to know yourself? How can you get to know your own flow, your own strengths, your own faith, in yourself and in life, and that's something you're comfortable with, and then have belief that isn't limiting of you. But those limiting beliefs are like instilled in you when you're being scapegoated on. It tends to make your world very small, if not extinguished, if you're not careful. I mean, they will go, kid you not, especially someone who is psychopathic, they will go, for the gusto. I mean, they will try to make you, miserable. And that's just even that's just the first of it. So, we're not talking about that here in this video, but, as we have it in previous videos. But what I think I'm alluding to is that with the scapegoating, there is a deprivation of a lot of positive states that become difficult for an individual to be able to then, feel comfortable with the alternate, on a daily basis. It becomes very difficult to learn to self-trust and to have sort of broader, beliefs about themselves and what they're capable of versus the smaller, just sort of, paralyzing, self-limiting beliefs that keep people really like in a 2x2, I mean, where, they're so basically paralyzed, they can't even, move. They have, it's just apathy. It can get so bad if you don't have any faith in self and you're chemically, down. Your brain chemistry, your hormones will not make a positive, mix. It will not do well, if you foster that negative environment and you don't start opening up, going out places, talking to people, brightening things up, making some changes, knowing what those changes are, and then executing them, doing them, cleaning up the lifestyle, cleaning up the relationships, cleaning up the finances, cleaning up the relationships, the friendships, making sure you're not ultra serious all the time, but that you have fun and, sure, have some giggles, go to a comedy club, have a funny movie. I mean, do something that's different so that, you're not so in the doldrums, but, realize that it's important to be able to reignite those positive states, which is difficult for people who have lived in the ulterior for a long period of time or an intense amount of time, where it's like their whole world became imbued with that. Like it just became like everything is falling apart over here. Like this ain't cool. This is too cool for school. Like I gotta get help now. Like, it's time to bust loose. So, being scapegoated makes it difficult, really, to even have, basic, even survival skills, I think, for a lot of people in knowing their feelings and, knowing how to have self-trust and have a vision for their future, again, that they can call forth, some of the, inspirations that they need to have, get themselves excited and looking forward to in planning. But especially if they're used to the narcissist sort of doing that and then taking the heat oftentimes. So you might have to take some leadership roles or find others who are more comfortable with sharing the leadership role for you, or with a group of people. Maybe it's a tennis group, maybe it's a bridge group, maybe it's a book reading group, maybe it's a spiritual group, maybe it's exercise, fitness, whatever it is you're into, cooking, dancing, yoga, whatever it is, and getting, your hands into some things will help to restore that sort of scapegoated lifestyle. It's like, your emotional bank balance is bankrupted out of, being scapegoated. Like once they hit the jackpot with you, they'll clean your drawers out. You'll be like, I got nothing left. You don't feel you have any value emotionally. That's what scapegoating will do. So you need to restore it. You need to put that back in your own emotional bank balance. Say that's actually an investment in me, and that's how, my light is even stronger and goes even farther. Because it'll just cut through their darkness. It pales them away. So you have to realize and develop that, I would say foundation of faith, whatever that means to you, and then a foundation of trust and being able to have some degree of calm instead of restlessness that oftentimes the scapegoated feeling can give you. And where you just feel, largely people who are scapegoated just feel that they're the one who are despicable. They get all the bad looks, they get all the finger pointing, they get all the blame, they get all the false accusations, they get told it's their fault. The fight was your fault. You did this. They're never, you never feel that you're on the right side of anything. And that is scapegoating because they want you to take all their sins and walk away, and so that they can just be done with all their sins. And wasn't that fun for them? So, they just want, but you're in a relationship, and that's why the cycle becomes more and more painful because they're trying to like send you away, and while they're just sort of, I think what we were describing before is it can be like this just sort of negative emotional vomit, where they're just spewing a lot of, anger and hostility and animosity and aggression. It can be like an emery board, like a literal emotional, it's just grinding you down. And so it's like, whoa, you got a buffer here. We got to buffer it out here. We got to get some space. This is not cool. And so, but that scapegoating, once you've lived in that state, it's very important to understand the contrary states that you need to learn to cultivate, adapt, and adjust to, that can cultivate more of an alignment with just sort of where your happiness is, and you're not sort of still imbued with all that sort of negativity that's trying to hang on. Like little by little, as you let go, it won't hang on to you anymore. And then you won't have to worry about it because it's already processed in the ether. It's already been there. It's already worked out. It's all right, already out of the emotional program. So you can say, well, wouldn't it be nice to have that out of the emotional program where I can just deprogram that out? And, that's what, using the meditation, that's what the astromations, that's what a lot of these exercises are for that we discuss here, the recovery date, all the different worksheets that we do, the lessons learned, the credibility jar, all these different things that we talk about that all point to the same thing to help it manifest and become real, so you will get that shift. So if you've been scapegoated, realize, that when you go no contact, it's to releasing you into freedom, liberty and freedom and independence and autonomy into happiness. So it's not releasing you into the doldrums, mediocrity, face pointed down, to never be seen the light of day again. That's, then you're just going to walk yourself into a wall in a corner because that's where you're focusing on. You're going to go where you focus on. If you focus on negativity, then you're going to wind up, in the cellar looking at, at the cold dark corner. If you focus on positivity, well, it's going to be a lot more warmer, cozy, and a lot more comfortable and pleasant, and maybe even enjoyable or fun, and what it's all about for you, like something that you can manage. Sure, a relationship with a narcissist that is wrought with scapegoating is very highly emotionally charged, and it is unmanageable oftentimes. So when you exit from them, life can feel unmanageable. It can get to be overwhelming. It can feel like a lot. It can feel like you've completely come undone and you don't know how to put it back together again. How do you sew the legs back on it? How do you get the arms back on your life? How do you get this rolling? So, that's why it's important to resensitize yourself and understand what projection and what scapegoating is, and then just understand how it impacted you, what it looked like, what it felt like, and then what it made you feel like, and then to realize that that is a process for them to sort of cleanse themselves. And it oftentimes it just makes some people feel better to do this to others, even though I don't understand any pleasure in hurting others. I mean, it just seems so counterintuitive. I mean, wouldn't you want the world to be a happier place? So then why would you want to make somebody unhappy? I mean, it just seems so odd. But anyway, um, so anyway, as we were saying, um, that that feeling state oftentimes has been deprived. That the person has been deprived of a lot of that positivity, of being able to be vulnerable and being able to trust others and being able to have boundaries and that protection, and that sort of trust. Just some very basic foundational things, which you have to have empathy, because empathy says, hey, this is a human being, they need help here, they're great here, they're human, so empathy, as is accepting of others. A narcissist, oftentimes on a lot of levels, they are not accepting of others. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's you. It doesn't mean if it's their grandma, if it's their mother, if it's, really a lot of people, they probably really like certain things like their pets, but, oftentimes, you know, they like themselves and they like their pets, that's probably often, I mean, they do like other people, but I'm talking about where you can really get close, oftentimes a lot of them have, a very concealed side that you don't see, but that might bubble to the surface and then cause the whole relationship to go radically sideways all of a sudden. I mean, it can build up for a long period of time, and then next thing you know, they're like, "Yep, we're hitting the road with a bandana and a stick, and we're, skipping to my loo. We're out of here." You're like, "What?" There's all sorts of people that I've worked with. I mean, just incredible things. Taking their kids in the middle of the night and I mean, just where are they? Where are we living? How am I going to see them? What do we, how does it's just complete baffling, heart-wrenching stuff. So very difficult to manage. So, scapegoating means that you have to realize that it's important to stop taking on other people's negative energy, and especially understanding if you are interpreting yourself as negative as such, because oftentimes people will develop a self-loathing from being scapegoated. They'll deep inside, they will not have self-esteem. They'll have a self-loathing. They will not, they will self-sabotage. They will not have trust and faith in themselves. They will self-sabotage. Things are going good. Next thing you know, they make a big spill. They're self-sabotaging. They're going to go right for, they're supposed to go for the big job. They go for the interview. And then, next thing you know, they just didn't set their alarm, or just they sabotage themselves. They do certain things that foul up their life that can become life-changing, life-altering, and especially important things. I think it's where the self-sabotaging takes place. On little things, but also big, important things where those things are especially matter. I mean, a lot of people can work through the little things, but you also have to be able to work through the big things. So, that scapegoating will result in a number of things. Oftentimes that self-limiting belief, lack of self-trust, and, lack of trust oftentimes in life too, because you're not used to cultivating or living that way or being responded to in that way, and having even a chance. So some people have really, they haven't taken the good road in their life, and they have a lot of reclamation work to do. Some people, they're just there. You just have to realize how important it is that you're understanding the result of that negative energy, and that you don't want to ingest that anymore. You don't want to continue to sort of hold that in within you, and you don't want to make that your I am. You don't want to be identified with that. So I think that's oftentimes very scary, because if you don't identify with some core people, then who do you identify with? So then you have to really work hard at defining that, and then finding your community or your contacts, getting connected with who, maybe you want to be, the best whittler in town. Then you better find who's got the wood and who's got the tools and who's going to set up your stuff. I mean, you got to start making some connections, being well connected, knowing people, knowing people with where you want to go and who can, be as a mentor to you, who can be able to take some leadership, who you can then be a follower, and then being able to maybe switch the roles, whenever, if ever you wanted to. The other thing, though, being said, is that you have to realize the toll that it takes, and then the lifestyle that has to change after you've been sort of scapegoated, the one who's sort of isolated or made to feel like the weak or meek. Again, it's usually, it's like, sometimes people are very testy. People, who are narcissistic, and definitely psychopathic, can be very testy of others. They're just they like to challenge others, but they don't like to be challenged. It's a very much of a double standard. They like to make other people look bad, but they only want other people to make them look good. It's just like the polar opposite. And very consistent at that. I mean, really, all people end up getting it. And the people who then join on the bandwagon, if they're trying to sing their song in unison with them, then you're just going to try to be like a narcissist. If and then find, whoa, I am not a narcissist, or I don't want to be that way. A lot of people then, back away from those relationships because they see that type of lifestyle that a narcissist leads, and it's not authentic and real and good. It's just not a livable place. It's not a habitable environment emotionally. And so, realize that you can be carrying a lot of these, and that can make your new positive flow states in trust and belief states even, optional, or even an optional or a choice for you. So realize how important it is for you now to not only stop doubting yourself, but be able to realize that you are a learner, you are a learning and growing human being. You're going to learn things in the day, whether it's how to stand up straight or use your voice or whatever, you're going to learn things, and don't make that interpreted as that you're a weak person because you're learning things. It's a great thing that you're learning things. It is amazing that you are learning to correct yourself, especially when it comes to defining yourself negatively. Be okay with correcting yourself. Be okay with changing yourself as a person into the person you want to become, and really that you are. Just because it couldn't be lived, in a habitable place with a narcissist doesn't mean that you can't live your life in this world. I mean, there's, bigger doors. There's bigger digs. There's, more sunsets and more sunrises up ahead. Where are you going to be for those? So, it's important to ask yourself, where do you want to be? Where do you want to say, what, couple little things would you like to change and then accomplish? You can certainly do that when you're not constantly being scapegoated on. It's your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today. I hope these videos do help. Please share, please subscribe, and please donate for more great tools, videos, discussions, and support. Peace out. Have a beautiful day.